Our keynote speaker today came over to me before we started and he said, you know, one piece of advice, keep the introduction short. So I will do that. But Al Monaco was appointed the President and Chief Executive Officer of Enbridge in October 1 of 2012. Mr. Monaco has for more than 30 years of experience in the energy business, including the upstream oil and gas exploration, development, and pipeline business. Since joining Enbridge in 1995, he's held positions including Executive Vice President, Major Products of Green Energy, President of the Gas Distribution Marketplace, Senior Vice President of Corporate Planning and Development, and the Financial Services and Treasurer for the company. It is important that we keep attuned and abreast of this important sector of our economy. Most will tell you that the jobs in this country in the last, through the recession, if it had not been for the gas and oil industry, there would have been few jobs created. So gentlemen who have this kind of responsibility in leading a company of this size and note are important to listen to their perspective and ideas that they have on the future because it affects our sector so much. With that, Al, please come forward and welcome you to the Illinois Manufacturers Association.
Well, as I was sitting there having my salad and listening to the dynamic senator and then the governor that's going to change the state in so many ways, I was wondering, this is going to be a very tall order to match, but I will give it a shot. I should also warn you that I have been told when speaking in front of U.S. Midwest audiences that I have a Western Canadian accent. So forgive me for that. But there are a lot of reasons why I jumped at this opportunity today, so thank you very much for the invitation. One reason is the Chicago Blackhawks are my second favorite hockey team, right after the Calgary Flames. And these days I favor the Blackhawks, actually. But more important, the Blackhawks, for a number of reasons I won't get into, are my wife's favorite hockey team. And in fact, we were scheduled to be at Game 6 against Tampa last year, which ended up being the final game of the Stanley Cup. And normally, this was a supplier invitation. Normally I don't accept those invitations, but I was going to make an exception. In any case, business got in the way at the very last minute, and of course, as I said, my wife's the #1 fan of the Blackhawks, so how do you think that went over on the home front? Now, a bigger reason is that Illinois is the heart of our pipeline business and a great part of our history. Not to mention the home to some of our most important customers and partners. And as far as we're concerned, Illinois is the center of the universe for energy. Here's why I say that. Over the last few years, we've invested more than $2 billion in Illinois, with more to come. And our staff in the Chicago area are part of the community here, along with thousands of other people that work on our projects and support our business. So, great hockey team, huge investment here, and our people are part of the community. All good reasons to be here. But here's the most important one. As the leader of a pipeline company these days, it's more critical than ever to connect directly with our stakeholders. So, listening carefully to community leaders and customers, ensuring that our values and passion for what we do as an energy business are very well understood, and to build an even stronger relationship and continue to earn the trust of communities. That's really the key to our business today. It's another way of saying that we don't really look at ourselves as just building and operating pipelines. We're proud of what we do, our role in the economy, and particularly being part of the community. Now, you'll notice here we've got a few slides, and in our business, you really can't do anything without showing a few maps, but we'll try and keep it to a minimum. What I want to talk about today, though, I think the governor may have referred to this, is a question that's on all of our minds, and that's around the connection between energy and the economy. And our company, Enbridge, has played an important role in the Illinois economy for 50 years. That's driven by providing reliable and competitively priced product to Midwest refineries, helping them to compete and grow, and supporting employment and state, as well as helping to ensure security of energy supply, diesel, gasoline, jet fuel. Most of the refined products here are actually consumed within Illinois. We've seen firsthand the positive impact of our projects and the spin-off effects, a huge multiplier effect with respect to suppliers, communities, jobs, and so on. And we see opportunities for continued growth across the Midwest. But today, it is not just about the economics. In fact, if you look as a company at the economic effects of what you do as the only marker, you do that at your peril. I say that because evolving public expectations have really put the spotlight on energy development and its impact on the environment. Energy consumers today are emboldened by their growing power in the marketplace and their increasing ability to have a voice on energy. And that voice is loud, and it's getting louder. Concerns over climate change reached, I think, probably a fever pitch in the last week or so before the climate conference in Paris. What should be apparent to everybody in the room is the perception that energy and environment are all or nothing proposition. So it's a question of either or. We don't believe that's the case. I believe that you can have a robust energy development that benefits the economy and protects our communities and environment at exactly the same time. So the question we need to be thinking about is, how do we best balance? And balance is the Canadian word for compromise that the governor used before. How do we balance the collective goal to reduce our impact on the environment while ensuring that we continue to meet the energy needs at reasonable prices? So to explore this question of balance, I'll talk about global North American consumption and North American consumption and the supply pictures coming up, and how we address the need for secure and reliable supply. I'll talk about how we're doing business differently to ensure we develop infrastructure in a much more sustainable manner than in the past. What's interesting today is that the pressure point for industry is no longer the oil and gas exploration company or the refiner. It is the midstream company, what we do, because that is the most convenient point of attack for those who oppose energy. Before I do that, getting to that issue of balance, a bit of context about who we are and what we do. Now, this map here shows our North American footprint. We move about 2.3 million barrels per day of crude oil across the border, more than half of all Canadian crude exports, much of that through Illinois. Canada is the biggest source of imported oil to the United States. We as a company are Canada's largest gas utility. We heat homes and provide other energy for 2 million homes in the Toronto area. Our natural gas pipelines, as you can see here, extend from Canada all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. Something you may not know, and may be tough to pick up on this slide, we are rapidly growing business on wind power. Enbridge-wide, we're also in the middle of executing the largest capital program in our history at $38 billion, and some of that, of course, is being invested right here in Illinois. Now, I don't put this map up because I want to boast about the size of our asset base, but it's really to illustrate that our perspective as a pipeline company is actually not regional, but more North American in scope. Our roots in Illinois go back into 1968. I'm going to bet most people did not know about the infrastructure that we have in this state. Today we have 10 liquids pipelines and our flagship Flanagan Terminal, a critically important hub on our entire network. We also have interests in the Alliance and Vector natural gas pipelines and the Au Sable processing plant at Channahon. Most of the natural gas delivered into Chicago on Alliance stays in Illinois, People's Energy and so forth. heating homes and providing low-cost energy to manufacturers as well, and I know that's important to this audience here. We also provide a critical link for growing Western Canadian and Bakken crude oil supply, delivering roughly 600,000 barrels per day to the Illinois and Indiana market, which includes players like Exxon, Citgo, Marathon, Phillips, and BP. That's about 75% of the total refining demand in this state. Our partners in life include companies like Evraz. They've provided us steel for the pipe, about 3,700 miles worth over the last decade. Future Environmental, Amaran, Novaspect. We invest heavily in the community and help fund equipment and training for emergency first responders. That one is a big priority for us. And like the IMA and its members, we've made education a priority and we fund numerous scholarships in the state. The dynamics of the North American energy business have changed considerably in the last little while, and Illinois has been at that forefront. The transformation of North American oil and gas actually began about a decade ago when Enbridge reversed the Cushing to Chicago line from a north to south direction. We call this pipeline the Spearhead line because it spearheaded our first foray into market access, expanding the market for our products so refiners could have better access to supply. That started moving Western Canadian crude all the way actually through to Cushing, Oklahoma. Spearhead was a catalyst for further inroads, including the Southern Access and Alberta Clipper projects. Together, they enabled substantial addition of Canadian oil and Bakken crude to refineries in Chicago and beyond. Those connections have provided real economic value. Since 2009, the cost of Canadian crude to the U.S. has averaged close to $9 per barrel below the average cost of imported crude. Our transportation conduit and its secure supply of low-cost feedstock prompted Illinois refiners to invest more capital to expand their refiners. And because of that, U.S. Midwest refineries are amongst the most competitive in the world. If you look at the chart of margins here in the U.S. Midwest compared to the rest of the globe, there's a huge difference. We've since twinned our Spearhead with the Flanagan South Pipeline, representing investment in Illinois of about almost $1 billion, actually. And with our new Seaway Pipeline, we've established the first large-scale path from Western Canada all the way through to the Gulf Coast. Now, the real benefit of all of this, and what I like to refer to as a synergy, a natural one, between Western Canada and the U.S. Midwest, is the fact that Canadian crude oil is very complementary to U.S. refining capability, just the way the feedstocks are constructed. This year, we're bringing on 3 new projects into service in Illinois: Southern Access Extension, Line 78, and the refurbishment of Line 61. $1.4 billion in total investment. That's a lot of construction. And actually, Byron Nealis is here with me today. He's the one that we charge to make sure that these projects get in on time and on budget. That's delivered significant benefits to Illinois. The construction jobs, direct construction jobs, are about 2,000 plus. But frankly, that way underestimates the economic benefit through spin-offs and all kinds of other supply chain impacts up the line. As we advance expansion projects into Superior, we're also looking at opportunities to further increase our capacity. One project we're actually looking at right now with our customers is twinning that Southern Access Pipeline, a potential investment of about $4 billion. So there's no doubt of our importance of the infrastructure to Illinois, but let me now just switch gears here and take a look at the broader energy landscape. Now, you can't talk about energy today without talking about oil prices. And it was referred to, I've been in the business for 30 plus years. I've never seen this kind of impact on our industry. Now, this is 2 sides of this coin, because low prices do provide a boost to consumers at the pump, It's good for refiners generally and airlines. I know there's some of those people here today. But the severity of this price hit is having a significant impact on upstream investment. Oil companies across North America cutting spending of up to $90 billion in 2015. And frankly, I don't see much of a better picture for 2016. Globally, more than 250,000 people have lost their jobs. That should be a concern to all of us. Now, I'm not going to get into oil forecasting today. Most people agree, though, that we are going to see a rebalancing of the market at some point. I say that because if you look at the amount of production every day, and you look at the decline rate of the reservoirs, and you look at the growth projections for demand, we're going to need to add about 35 million barrels per day globally of new production. Now, if oil prices are $40 to $50, that investment is not going to take place. The returns are simply not sufficient enough to encourage that new investment. So eventually, the price of crude will have to move up to encourage that marginal barrel to come on to meet that demand. So what we're seeing today, in a nutshell, is a period of price discovery between demand and supply. And as I referred to earlier, I don't have a crystal ball on this, but it's probably not going to see a demand-supply balance at least until 2017. But let me just come back to one big picture point. The long-term fundamentals of the energy business are very positive. Global consumption of all energy is going to rise by anywhere from 30 to 40% by 2040. Why is that? We are going to have population growth of 2 billion people. We are going to double the number of cities that exceed 10 million people. And there's going to be an improvement in living standards across the world. All of that is going to take more energy. To meet that demand, all sources of supply are going to be needed. That's what the chart shows on the right. But the supply mix is going to change. Renewables are going to be the fastest growing, but you're starting from a very low base there. And natural gas will be also very strong. But the reality is that our existing fuel base will be required to meet the lion's share of our needs, probably 3/4. For North America, this adds up to, I think, a very huge competitive advantage. You think about what our advantage is on this continent. We have massive unconventional resources and the technology and skills to unlock those reserves. The rest of the world is at least 15 to 20 years behind what we've done in North America to unlock this potential. And of course, we have the capital markets and funding to make sure that development happens. That creates a tremendous opportunity, and an opportunity for that competitive advantage. And in turn, energy security, economic development, and with that goes social prosperity, the social programs that we all want in North America. But that's only going to happen if we can build connectivity, better connectivity between supply and key markets. North American energy infrastructure was built for a world in which imported crude and natural gas, bringing it from coastal areas to inland markets. Today, we need to continue to serve inland markets, but we also need to make sure that energy can get to coastal markets to have that better connectivity with the rest of the world. Now, relatively cheap crude, as I said earlier, is good for the refining business. But having the right price signal for investment is critical. You need to have that signal to support upstream investment that will truly yield and further that competitive advantage that I was talking about. I think we have made progress. For example, our company has opened up about 1.7 million barrels per day of new markets, including some of the projects that I referred to earlier in Illinois. I think that's going to help producers get to market, but it also ensures refineries have as much feedstock as they want, and reliable feedstock. So if we're right about the price of oil going up, and gas, by the way, the same holds true for natural gas, all should be good, right? Well, the answer to that is actually no. Opposition to energy development is by far the most critical element of competition that we have in our business. It's causing uncertainty, and the governor referred this around regulatory issues, around expectations and timelines. And much-needed market access projects are being delayed. I'll give you one recent example. We had a project to reverse a pipeline. Now, reversing a pipeline is probably the most benign thing that a company like ours could ever do. And the time it took was approximately 3.5 times what it should take in the normal course. So those uncertainty and delays are exacerbating capacity constraints, and that would help provide crude to refineries like the ones in this state. Our system is running full today. In fact, we're turning away volumes. And we know production is still growing out of Western Canada. It will find ways to market, but it will likely find it with rail. We recently saw a major energy player in Canada take a write-down of $2 billion because of low oil prices and their inability to get product to market. That's the amount of the write-down. That wasn't the amount that they could have spent in developing their project. Now, the root cause of all of this opposition really comes down to a confluence of 2 or 3 things. Number one, we have to recognize there is legitimate public concern about climate change. There's also been significant safety incidents from our business, and upstream and downstream as well. So that's shaken public confidence. So the industry hasn't done itself any favors along the way. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the opposition is really focused on targeting the transportation conduits as a means to halt energy development. So the outcome is an extremely challenging and prohibitive landscape for developing energy in North America, which brings me to this question of balance or compromise. The question is, how do we strike a balance between meeting the energy needs and rising expectations of the public, communities, and regulators? So here's the way we look at it as a company. The pipelines and facilities that we build and operate require public trust and confidence that we're transporting energy responsibly. And that means safety and environmental protection have to come first. The economic benefits alone of doing a project, the things that I described that were so prominent around the economic effects, those on their own are not enough anymore to get public support for what energy companies do. The public wants to know that we're getting better, that we're continuing to improve, and they want to know that we're doing everything we can to prevent incidents. And I think they have the right to expect that. Key to that for us is engaging communities earlier, more often. And one of the projects that I referred to earlier, Flanagan South, I think is a great example. It used to be in our business, you'd go out to the community, you'd have some slides or maps, and you'd have lines on there explaining where this project's going and why it's good for them. We didn't do that in that project, and that's generally what we don't do anymore. We first sat down with them and listened to their concerns to gain an understanding of what it is that was on their mind before we started talking about our project. We asked for input. And in many cases, when you're talking to local communities, you'll find that they have the best grasp of how to manage risk. And we also are very proud of how we worked with the Native American communities as partners in the project rather than just a constituent. We brought communities out to our work site. And the reason we do that is not to just show them a piece of pipe, but to illustrate how our people are so passionate about what they're doing and making sure they protect the environment. So in that case, I think it was a textbook case of gaining the public trust in a real considered way, and that's the way you have to approach the business today. Also key is how we think about regulatory requirements. We often hear about this in our business. Our goal is not just to meet the letter of regulation. This comes up in our office all the time. Well, the regulatory standard is this. The goal is to not meet the requirements, but to exceed. That means you have to strive for being world class. You also have to have that relentless focus on safety, and I know the refiners in this state look at this the same way. Over the past 4 years, we've executed the most comprehensive maintenance and integrity management program in the history of pipelines in North America. We've enhanced the operations and monitoring capability that provide multiple layers of protection and redundancy. Here's the point. We don't see capital investment in our system as a drag on profitability. It's that investment that enables us to ensure reliability for our customers, that is actually going to drive more volumes on our system so we can bring those volumes to market. And it also allows us to fulfill our commitment to the public. Remember, it comes back to trust. This week, climate change is dominating the global headlines. And on that topic, I want to recount a little story. I received a letter recently from a group of university students, fairly prominent university in Canada, which I think is a good illustration of this, what I think is this either-or type of mentality that we're in. Basically, these students had a list of questions, but they all boiled down to why we wouldn't simply take our $38 billion in capital and invest it in renewables. And they also suggested that we decommission everything we have and reinvest it in other things or pay it back to shareholders. My response, just like my remarks today, is we need to achieve a balance when we're looking at energy. We don't disagree that the environment is something we all need to be focused on. Enbridge, in fact, and our industry have acknowledged that very same thing. But you really have to put your money where your mouth is. Something that we don't lose sight of is despite the growth in energy supply between now and 2040, is the rapid growth in renewable supply. But let's remember this. Even in 2040, more than 800 million people will still not have access to electricity, and 1.8 billion people will not have access to clean cooking fuels. We believe that it's our responsibility as a company to strike the right balance, to make the transition to a lower carbon emission economy over time. Just to illustrate how that transition works and to give you a proof point on putting your money where your mouth is. Over the last decade, we've invested $5 billion in 19 wind, solar, and geothermal facilities with generating capacity of 2,600 megawatts. And to equate that to day-to-day life, that's enough to power about 750,000 homes. We're looking actually to double that renewable energy capacity over the next 5 years. Now, we're not doing that so we can put a windmill on our annual report. We're doing it because those projects are truly economic at the same time. We're also investing in emerging technologies like energy storage and improving the efficiency of solar panels. Growing natural gas supply is also a priority for us. The increased use of natural gas is one of the most effective ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Energy conservation and efficiency is always also critical. Now, you get the idea that there's a number of factors here to really make an impact on climate change. For example, through our gas utility, we've helped our customers save about 16.5 million tons of emissions since 1995. And that's about the same level as taking about 3 million cars off the road for a year. So I'm going to conclude now. The biggest threat to accomplishing our goals of energy development and environmental protection is this polarized debate that we're in. But I think there are signs that this is changing. So we are actually quite optimistic, especially over the last month. In Alberta, our home province, our provincial government released its climate leadership plan, which includes a number of factors, which I won't get into here. But I think it really reflects a true turning point in this whole debate. And I say that because standing on the stage of this announcement were producers, so energy people, environmental groups, the government, and First Nations, or Native Americans, as you would say. That is a tremendous accomplishment and a good example of how collaboration needs to happen and is working. So on all sides, we've come at the problem like the students did in their letter, from the perspective that we have to make a choice. So it's either energy or it's the environment. The decision we need to make is not which side to be on, but how we can most effectively bring those two sides together. We believe that a balance can be achieved, that we can protect the environment while continuing to meet our energy needs at the lowest cost. And by doing so, we in North America can realize this competitive advantage that we actually have and waiting for us to execute on relative to the rest of the globe. I'm going to close by putting the challenge back to the group here. Let's think about and work every day in trying to close the polarized debate. How can we best achieve our collective goal of reducing the impact on the environment while ensuring that we continue to meet society's needs in a sustainable way? That's the question. That's the discussion we need to have, and I ask all of you to have it as you go forward. Thank you very much. Questions?
Any questions that anyone would like to have or sparked from that? Bill.
What do you perceive is going to happen with OPEC?
The question was what's going to happen with OPEC? I actually think that OPEC is going to be alive and well. I know there's a lot of speculation today about whether or not they are effective in the current environment, but I think in the long run there's a lot of production there, and I think ultimately you will see cooperation continue. So I actually think they will be around for a very long time, and they will be effective. That's my view.
I have a question over here.
Would you still invest in wind turbines if the tax credits disappear?
The question was, would we invest in wind if there weren't tax credits? I'm paraphrasing there a little bit. The short answer is, in the immediate term, we need the subsidy. There's no doubt about that. But let me just emphasize that over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a massive change in the technology and the efficiency of wind in particular. Our first wind farm we invested in had a capacity, each turbine now, of 0.6 megawatts. Today, in offshore wind application, it's 6 megawatts, so 6 times the size. So that provides an advantage. The type of blades that are used, the technology and how the blades are positioned on the turbine. These are all things like anything, you're seeing the cost curve really come off. So I think we're actually at a point in some cases where we are competitive. And remember, I think people always compare the price of renewables to the price of power they see on their bill. I think what we've got to look forward to in the future is that our existing fuel base may also attract some additional carbon tax along the way. So I guess my point is, where it used to be like this in terms of renewables and other forms of power, it's certainly coming a lot closer. The question is Keystone Pipeline and general thoughts about that. Well, it's not our project, I'll say that. But, you know, I have to say, even though it's not our project, that at the end of the day, I think the project should have been approved. I haven't seen, you know, a lot of sound debate as to why it wouldn't have on the merits and based on all the work the Department of State has done. I think, you know, at the end of the day, You've got this great resource in North America, and we are importing crude from all over the world, still in the United States. So to me, it makes sense to have the combination of Canadian supply with U.S. Gulf Coast or U.S. Midwest refining capability. So I think at the end of the day, the project makes sense, as do other conduits. I mean, if you look at it, as I said earlier, we move 2.3 million barrels per day, every day across the border. We do it safely. So I think that's about all I can say about the project, because beyond that goes into a realm that I'm probably not an expert at.
Okay, Al, thank you very much.
Okay.